For calling the Missouri Department of Revenue. Your call may be recorded or monitored.
Asking your name, address, age, and social security.
Please hold while we connect your call.
This is Desiree Wolford.
Desiree?
Yes, I'm an attorney with Missouri Department of Revenue. How can I help you?
Am I on speakerphone?
Yes.
How many other people are in the room with you?
That's it.
That's it? So
Just me.
Condra didn't come in with you?
It's just me.
Okay. Problem I'm having is that she's not very consistent, and she doesn't seem to be acting in good faith. She says she has evidence. When I question her on that, she says it's about documents. I ask her how those documents prove the Constitution and laws apply to Loretta, and she tells me she doesn't have the ability to answer that and has to send it to the legal department.
Yeah, I mean, if you're bringing up legal concerns or legal arguments, then yeah, it would be more appropriate to speak with an attorney.
Well, maybe so, but I was raising an issue of fact based on what she had already told me. I was just, based on what she told me, she said there was evidence. I asked her about that, asked her if that was actually proof that the Constitution laws apply to Loretta, and she said she didn't have the ability to answer. So it's, if she doesn't have the ability to answer, she shouldn't be answering the questions in the first place. She has no business stating that there's evidence to show that the Constitution laws apply and if there's jurisdiction over Loretta if she's not, if she doesn't have the ability to answer such questions. It's misleading at best.
Okay. I don't know the circumstances here. I just took the call. Is Loretta a Missouri resident?
Sorry?
Is Loretta a Missouri resident?
No,
a resident of the state of Missouri?
The question that we have, that is the legal opinion. The question that we have is because the determinations have already been made, and there's a garnishment for the forcible taking of her property. In lay terms, your agency, your company is stealing from Loretta. So the question we have is, what evidence, or can you confirm that there's evidence proving that your Constitution and laws apply to Loretta, and if there's any jurisdiction over her at all?
Well, that's why I'm asking if she's a resident of Missouri.
No, there's no evidence to that effect. What evidence do you have that your Constitution and codes apply to Loretta?
Well, sir, you're not answering my questions. How
I
can
already
I answer
did.
your questions
I said
if I don't have enough information?
There's no evidence to show that she's a resident. Are you under the impression that if someone is physically in Missouri, then the laws, the Constitution and laws of Missouri apply to them?
If they're a resident of Missouri, yes.
So let's break this down. Let's leave the legal mumbo-jumbo out of it. Are you under the opinion that just because someone is physically in Missouri, that the laws and the Constitution of Missouri apply to them?
Sir, I'm answering your question, and I'm saying that if they're a resident of Missouri, or if they've earned income in Missouri, they are subject to Missouri tax laws.
Well, the question is, do you believe that the Constitution and laws in general apply to someone just because they're physically in Missouri?
Yes.
Okay, now what evidence do you have to prove that just because someone is physically in Missouri, that the Constitution and laws automatically apply?
If someone is speeding in Missouri, they have to abide by the speed limit.
I didn't ask you that. You said and you agreed that if someone is just physically in Missouri, the Constitution and laws apply. So what evidence do you have to prove that statement?
To prove what statement?
That the Constitution and laws of the state of Missouri apply just because you're physically in Missouri.
Well, sir, I'm not sure I understand your question then.
You're an attorney, correct?
Yes, I am.
Do you believe the Constitution and laws apply to people physically in Missouri, right? So it's just a matter of what evidence do you have to support that opinion.
And you're an attorney, correct?
No, I'm asking you a direct question. What evidence do you have to support your opinion that the Constitution and laws of the state of Missouri apply just because someone's physically in Missouri?
Well, I mean, can you answer my question first? Are you an attorney?
It has no bearing on this whatsoever, ma'am.
It does. You're trying to make legal arguments.
No, I'm not. Oh, stop. I'm asking you a simple question of evidence. I'm not making an argument
at all. It's not
a
simple question, sir.
It's not? Why is it not a simple question? You made a statement. You made a legal determination that the Constitution and laws of the state apply because you're physically in Missouri. I'm just asking you for the evidence to back that up.
That Loretta's physically in Missouri?
Can you just answer the question?
Excuse me?
I just need you to answer the question. What evidence do you have to show that the Constitution and laws of the state apply just because someone is physically in Missouri?
I would think that we'd have to answer that based on an individual person, not as vaguely as you're asking it.
Well, you answered it in the vague that you stated that if someone is physically in Missouri, the Constitution and laws apply. And I said, okay, great, that's your opinion. Now, what evidence do you have to back that up?
Like the actual statutes? You want the statutes that?
No, I'm asking for evidence that your Constitution and laws in general, the entire body of Missouri state law, that you agreed apply just because me or Loretto or someone else is physically in Missouri. You've already taken that position. That's a very common position. Most people are laboring under that delusion. I just want the evidence to prove that just because me or Loretto are physically in Missouri, that the constitutional laws apply.
Well, I would just refer you to the statutes or an attorney of your own.
Excuse me? I'm looking for evidence the Constitution and laws themselves apply. Why would I have to go speak to an attorney? I'm talking to one now who's already made the determination that if I'm physically in Missouri, the Constitution and laws apply. I need you to support that opinion. If
you don't agree with my opinion, then that's why you would hire an attorney to dispute that.
No, I'm not stupid. I don't need to hire an attorney to get an answer or to get the evidence that your opinion is based on. I'm a rational professional.
The evidence that I'm providing you is the statutes of Missouri revised statutes. I would look at those.
So the Missouri revised statutes are evidence of themselves that they apply to me or Loretta just because I'm physically in Missouri.
Yes.
That is circular logic, ma'am. That is not evidence. Saying
sorry you feel that way.
It's not a matter of how I feel. It's a matter of logic and reason. If you are saying that the law applies because the law says so, that is the definition of circular logic, and that's a logical fallacy. It's not evidence. I can write down here that Marc's law applies to Desiree, and what evidence do you have, Marc, that your law applies to me? Because Desiree, hire an attorney or just read it yourself. It says it applies to you. I mean,
so, sir, I understand I understand what you're saying, but where are you going with this?
What do you mean? I think we've just established that the only thing that you rely on to prove that your Constitution and laws apply to someone like Loretta is a logical fallacy, that the law applies because the law applies. But you don't have any actual evidence to prove that your constitutional laws apply to Loretta. And if you don't have any evidence of that, then you can't prove that there's any jurisdiction, and rational adults dealing in good faith would withdraw the garnishment and leave Loretta alone until such a time as they have evidence. Because without evidence your constitutional laws apply, you're stealing her property, or you're stealing her money.
And what law do you have to provide that says all that you just told me? Because I don't believe there's any law that you're working with.
I'm working with reason.
You're talking about logical fallacies, but what laws of the United States are you looking at that supports what you're saying? Because we go by laws.
Do you go by evidence too?
We go by laws.
Do you arbitrarily apply those laws?
If you can show that Loretta was not a resident or earned income in Missouri, then that would be helpful to this situation.
But the fact that we've established you have no evidence to prove.
Can I get a word in here?
Yeah, sure.
I'm Dr. Loretta's husband, and I generally speak for her, and I'm listening to this conversation. Are you in Jefferson City, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Then you're within the Archdiocese of Jefferson City. Does that make you subject to the bishop?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir.
I'm saying that you're living within the jurisdiction, within the area that encompasses the Diocese of Jefferson City. Does that make you subject to the dictates of the Bishop of Jefferson City?
I don't know what bishop you're referring to.
Madam, please. It's not a question that requires any great expertise to answer. You're within the area designated as the Missouri Synod of the Lutheran Church. Does that make you subject to the Synod of the Lutheran Church? Come on, just because you're physically in a place, does that mean the people who call themselves the rulers there can make you do whatever they want? Your organization is claiming a greater right to my wife's property than she has. We just want to know how you can possibly do that. You're telling us it's the law, but since your organization makes the laws, what you're telling me is that you are entitled to my wife's property because you say so. We just questioned that.
And we clearly established
but you don't have any law to substantiate what you're saying. I mean, that's the issue here.
Yeah, well, let's wait.
What law?
Wait,
if
doctor.
somebody comes up to me in the street and says, give me your money or I'll shoot you, do I need to cite a law?
Well, they would be breaking the law, yes.
It's just elementary justice, ma'am. If you claim you're entitled to my wife's money, you must have some proof that she owes it to you. Not simply because you wrote down someplace that she owes it to you when you're going to say that's the proof.
Yeah, and ma'am, if you want to play this ridiculous legal game, that we have to cite some kind of law that, you know, to show that what you're doing is wrong. Well, one, you've admitted that you have no evidence. That it's just basically a circle of logic. And
I have not admitted anything.
Yeah, you said the law applies because the law said so. So whether you want to admit that that's circular, it is. So rational people can agree to that. Rational people with, you know, who are acting in good faith. Well, yeah, if that's circular logic. Your own laws require that you have what's called due process. Okay? You are not permitted under your code to arbitrarily attack people, to arbitrarily take people's property. So to answer your question and play your game, you're violating your own due process requirements by not having evidence. So can we move further now to a resolution of this garnishment?
How are you wanting to resolve it?
I want you to back off today. I want this garnishment stopped until you and the people you work with can provide more than just a logical fallacy to show that your constitutional laws apply to Loretta and that there's any jurisdiction over her.
So you haven't provided us a reason to stop the garnishment. You arguing with me is not...
I'm not arguing.
You are arguing, and
no.
It doesn't provide a reason for the garnishment.
An argument is a collected series of statements leading to a definite proposition. It's an intellectual process. We're not really engaging in that. All you're doing is contradicting me, and you're disagreeing with me. What I have presented to you is that by your own admission, all you have is the law as evidence of itself, and that you do not have any evidence to prove that your constitutional laws apply. That's what I presented to you. Now, if you don't want to exercise good faith and at least put the brakes on, we will take what we've gotten from you today. We will bring your bad faith and due process violation higher up the food chain. We'll take it to your supervisor. And we're going to contact the company that you're forcing to give Loretta's money over to, and we're going to contact them and let them know about this conversation, that you have no evidence, that you are acting in bad faith, and even though I gave you the legal grounds and the factual grounds, you still will not do the right thing. So can we take a step back, exercise some good faith, and talk about getting this stopped?
Sir, we are exercising good faith.
No, you're not. If you want to exercise good faith, then what you'll do is you'll talk about dropping this garnishment right now.
If you dispute the garnishment, there's ways to dispute it. I would suggest getting an attorney to find out how to do that.
You don't have any evidence. You rely on a logical fallacy. If we were to take you to court on Monday and call you as a witness to come into court and testify to what you're talking about right now, do you really want to go under oath and testify that your laws apply because they say they apply? Do you see what I'm getting at about bad faith?
Sir, you can do, that's your option. You can dispute the garnishment. I'm not trying to prevent you from doing that.
No, what you're doing is...
Because the laws that the court follows are the same laws that the Department of Revenue follows.
Oh, but ma'am, your organization owns the courts, and you pay the judges. How seriously can we take that?
I don't...
Now, your statute law says 143.902 that garnishments apply to taxpayers. We're questioning how my wife became a taxpayer because federal courts have ruled that there are taxpayers and non-taxpayers, and tax laws only apply to taxpayers. So how do you prove that my wife has the status of a taxpayer other than simply by asserting it over and over and over ad nauseum?
Well, if you're saying that she's not a taxpayer, well, when the tax was assessed, why didn't you protest the assessment?
Oh, madam, if you had access to the file, you'd find dozens of letters we've written in where I've offered to pay any tax that we owe if we could be shown some objective factual evidence that my wife is a taxpayer.
Okay, because you would have gone to the Administrative Hearing Commission if that was the case.
The Administrative Hearing Commission, we've been before the Administrative Hearing Commission, which is, again, a rubber stamp operated by someone who is employed by or has been a former employee of the Missouri Department of Revenue. And, again, the point...
I mean, the thing is that you were telling me that you don't follow the laws of the state of Missouri. It's kind of hard to...
No, ma'am. Do not characterize it that way.
At all, ma'am. Don't put words in my mouth.
Are you saying that
you are claiming that my wife is a taxpayer? And your only basis for claiming that is because you say so. You can't offer us any evidence whatsoever that she has that status. That's all we're asking for. If she is a taxpayer and you can prove it, you've got your money. I've told the Department of Revenue that many times.
Ma'am, this is a lack of evidence on your side. Do not characterize it as Loretta or Dr. Hines' shortcomings, because it's offensive. If you guys have the evidence that he's requested all these years, you just have to put it on a table. But telling me that the law applies because the law applies is not going to cut it. And while we're at it, how do your statutes stand up as evidence that your Constitution applies to Loretta? Could you explain that one to me? Or does
the Constitution apply to Loretta?
Yeah, I was asking what evidence you have to show the Constitution and state law applies to Loretta, and you said state law. That was your answer.
It applies to everyone that's a citizen of Missouri.
Well, but my question was, and you answered this, that you are of the opinion that just because someone is physically in Missouri, that the Constitution and laws apply to them. You agreed to that. And then when I asked you about the evidence to support that, you said the code, the laws, as if the laws were evidence of themselves, which is, well, come on, it's nonsensical. What evidence would you have to show that the Constitution has any application to Loretta?
I guess I don't understand what you're arguing.
And yet you'll offend me, you'll try your best to offend me by saying that I or Dr. need to go get a lawyer to explain it. If you don't understand it, and
I would recommend still.
Well, but you hold an advanced university degree, and I'm asking you for evidence that your Constitution applies to me or Loretta just because we're physically in Missouri, and you can't offer an answer.
Well, because I don't understand your question.
I'm asking you for evidence to prove that the Constitution applies to me or Loretta just because we're physically in Missouri.
And I've tried to explain that to you, but because you don't find my answer acceptable, it doesn't matter.
No, you didn't try to explain about the Constitution. You tried to explain about the laws by saying that the laws are evidence of themselves because they say so. But you made no attempt to address why the Constitution would apply just because someone is physically in Missouri. So, as someone holding an advanced university degree, a doctorate, what evidence do you have to show that your Constitution applies just because of, me or Loretta, we're physically in Missouri?
Sir, I apologize, but I'm not going to keep having this conversation with you. I mean, I'm not sure where it's going and if it's relevant to what you're wanting to resolve, which is the garnishment.
Well, that 20-some-odd seconds of that pregnant pause was very, very telling. Where I'm going, I've already explained it to you, that anyone paying attention would understand. I think what you're just trying to do is a lawyer dodge, as if we're so stupid that we'll buy that. Where we're going with, and I'll repeat it, is that you don't have any evidence to support your finding or your opinion that the Constitution laws apply and you have any jurisdiction over Loretta at all.
And what I'm saying is that if you believe that there's no evidence, then dispute the garnishment. But arguing with me about this logical, illogical argument, it's not going to resolve the garnishment.
Well, it may not resolve it with you because you're not exercising any good faith. But what's the name of your supervisor and their contact information? Because we'll relate what you've told us to them.